Okay, welcome to the third video of this overall series working with simple ascx page forms. So we've put together a couple of different input types, essentially for a customer visiting your website potentially who wants to maybe get in contact with you, and they're dropping their contact information. And this is very simple, pretty much what we're looking at right here. But since the last video 2, I went ahead and just kind of updated the names here for the checkbox. So the abbreviation, I made it CHK, and then just contact in the ID field over here in the property section. Similarly, for the drop-down list, I abbreviated it to DDL and then just type. And the same thing for radio button list, I abbreviated it to RBL and then preferred. And as I said in the previous version, I still am not sure if that's the correct spelling of preferred, but doesn't really matter that much for the intent and purposes of what we're doing here. So to get started on today's video, we're going to be just displaying our answers back out to the user as to what it was that they selected. So first thing we want to go ahead and do is validate that all of these different types of inputs are in fact selected. So first thing we're going to do is, because we already have done the name to make sure that it wasn't blank, we're going to go ahead and do the check contact next. So under this if statement, so this reads if txt username.text doesn't equal blank, then it was entered successfully. And we're going to add another subline in there that says if if chk contact dot selected value for this one. And this is important because for lists of different types, you obviously it may be a list of numbers, a list of words which are in programs referenced to as strings. It could be money types, which are typically in the value of what's called floats. There's different types that you can pretty much get, but for the intents and purposes of what we're doing here, it's selected value, so that kind of covers all those different types of what may be in the list. So we want to make sure that that again is not blank. So we're doing that within that if statement, and that's how that if statement reads in plain English. And we're just going to kind of keep going and creating sub if statements to make sure that the validation is done. And in correct programming, what you would do is essentially create a validation class, so you could kind of reuse this system of validating to really just one line where you would call an external class and it would validate everything all at once. And it would, if it was true, then you would be able to proceed. If not, then it would just give you the error of where it crashed. But for simple programming, we're just going to kind of keep going here. The next type is a drop-down list, and that's going to be abbreviated to DDL, and that's how we reference it because that was the name that we gave it. Selected value not equal to blank. And again, we're going to open up our brackets. We're just going to erase that real quick and repaste it down here so that it auto formats, and then if statement again, and we're going to look at our last different type, which is RBL preferred. So if RBL preferred dot selected value does not equal blank, and we're just going to do our last series of brackets, and there we are. So if all these things are correctly entered, then we'll create an output string. So we're just going to repurpose this like we have been previously. So instead of saying it was, you know what, actually we'll just create a new label. That would probably make more sense. So we're going to drag a new label on, and we're just going to format it as we have previously. And we're going to give it a name. We're going to say LBL answers. And I don't really have to do this, but we'll just scrap that out. So here we go. The answers will be right here. So we're going to formulate a string real quick. And we're going to say LBL answers are equal to. So the first thing we have in there is a name, right? So now we need to assign a name to that, a value to that name. So that what we're going to do is reference the username of where it was entered in that text box, we're going to say text, and that allows us to access the string that was input in that text box. And next we're going to do, oh, you know what, one thing I missed was, because this is referencing an object, we need to reference the value within that object, which is text. Now, objects and classes are used in a series of programming, which is essentially something that's called object-oriented programming. It can get very complicated, and for understanding how software like Visual Studio in its better form typically works, you want to understand what object-oriented programming is, but it's not absolutely necessary for what we're doing right now. But just to understand that referencing a text attribute of a label is essentially accessing it's just a piece of what a text box contains. It's a value that's associated with the text box. So we're going to keep going down and inserting these different inputs that we were given. So this is a piece of syntax that is given in HTML, this little break line. So what it's going to do is break this line up between the one that you currently are seeing and the next one. So now we will enter in, what was the next input value? Contact. So we will say contact, question mark, and then just a little colon so they looks nice. And we're going to say chk contact.selected value. We're going to do the same thing as we did above, break line, and the next line. And this will be business type. So we'll just say type, another colon, get a little space in there too. That was DTL type dot selected value, and again another break line. And then the last type is preferred contact. So RBL preferred dot selected value. So preferred. By the end of this video series, I'm going to make sure that I have correctly spelled preferred. RBL preferred dot selected value plus, no break line necessary, and end line. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to run this, and it will pop up with the answers once we click it in there. I'm going to just set that and keep it there. That's fine. All right, let's run this and see how it works. All right, so name we're going to enter is Gavin, contact, nope, business type, technology this time, and we'll go with email. So now we're going to click submit, and there we go. Gavin, contact, no, type, technology, and preferred email. So this is video number 4 in the video series. In the next type video, we're going to essentially take this entire input screen and we're going to convert it into what's called a custom control. So as opposed to using the controls that Visual Studio gives you naturally, we're going to go ahead and create this form in a different page and drag it on in what's called an ascx file. And that'll be lesson number 4 or 5. It'll be lesson number 4.